people can so that people can join. Uh,
Good morning, everyone. And here we are, February 2026, and we're honoured to have the senior strategic finance team from Richmond upon Thames Council, so the authority of the London Borough of Richmond upon Thames, to share their financials, how they performed last year, just top line to give us an idea, and forecasted targets and so forth for this year. So again, to give us some sense of where the priorities are in the business community and more generally across the borough as residents. And there's also obviously the sensitive subject for businesses of business rates, and we're very grateful to know where that stands for businesses in the borough of Richmond upon Thames. And we've heard the message a number of times before, but it never hurts to hear it again. So I'm going to pass over to Alex and Catherine for the next 40 minutes or so to share those points with us. And we hope you find it interesting. If you have any questions along the way, please email me and I'll be sure to ask your question. Thank you very much. Over to you, Alex and Catherine.
Thank you very much, Anne. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today's session to consult on the budgets of the Council for the year from April. I'm Catherine Burston, the Director of Financial Management, the remit of which includes setting budgets and council tax. And also on the call is Alex Wilson, Director of Revenue Services, responsible for services which include council tax and business rates collection. I'll go through a few slides and then I'll hand over to Alex. So why are we here? We've just outlined our budgets and council tax proposals for 2026-27, and as with all boroughs, we are required to consult with our business ratepayers before doing so. These budgets will get formal approval at the council meeting on the 3rd of March. So thank you for all being here. This is a really important part of our process. Firstly, let's start with what happened last year. Service budgets actually overspent, largely as a result of both increased numbers and increased costs of supporting the homeless in temporary accommodation, and also increased demand within social care. People continue to present with more complex needs that require more intensive services and cost us more money. People are living longer with more complex conditions, and nationally, the social care sector continues to face several challenges arising from a combination of long-term public spending constraints, significant demographic growth, inflationary and market pressures, and increased complexity of cases. To help fund the overspend, the Treasury team continue to be proactive in investing our cash balances to generate actually the second best returns in London on our investments. And overall investments were averaging over 5% last year. During the year, £1 million was spent assisting residents and businesses during the cost of living crisis. And we also maximised the use of our household support fund funding of 0.8 million, again received from government. This included providing free school meals in the holidays and additional fuel grant payments. This grant, however, is going to change from the new year, more of which on later. Overall general reserve balances dropped by £6 million as a result of their planned use to both meet the budget gap and support residents through the cost of living and deliver change and transformation. However, we're still in a healthy position, and we have £58 million in what we call general reserves that can be used to help balance budgets. And this is reasonable level, but no means at the level of most London boroughs. And we must remember that reserves can only be used once. Once they run out, they are gone. So let's move on to 2026-27. From April, we're proposing to spend £362 million in the year, and this is our day-to-day service spend. It's divided up on this pie chart into our main service areas, so you can see that the majority of our spend is actually on social care, with 55% across what we call our children's services, which is provided by our AFC contract through a separate company, and adult social care services. This includes providing mental health support and services for clients with learning disabilities, as well as assisting older people and public health services within our adult social care, and supporting children in our care and those with special educational needs. So this is the biggest proportion of our budget and where we're seeing significant pressure in our spend and cohort. But how do we fund it? As you've seen before, our majority of our funding comes from council tax, almost 50% on this slide in orange. We receive low levels of government grants compared to other boroughs by the small, this really small grey slice of 1%, but actually that's going to fall even further, which I'll come on to in a minute. Government have reset the whole business rate system, so we now actually get to keep very little of the business rates that we collect, less than 1%. The rest of it gets redistributed across the country, but that is all part of the fair funding review that government have initiated and will be starting from April. I'll talk about that in a minute. Our other areas of spend are capital spend, so where we invest in the borough. The largest chunk, as per this chart, is within the remit of finance and policy. That actually includes property. So it incorporates the budget for the redevelopment of Twickenham Riverside at almost £60 million, and also Ham Close and LRA Hall regenerations, all providing more community benefits such as outdoor spaces and new affordable homes within the borough. We've also got a further £10 million property acquisition programme within that slice, on top of what has been spent before, and that's investing in our housing across the borough. The administration is keen to maintain existing assets and infrastructure across the borough to a good standard, and this year we will see the continuation of the highest ever investment in roads and pavement infrastructure across the borough, investing over £15.5 million over the period from 2025-26 to 27-28. Investment also continues in maintaining and improving our leisure facilities alongside the new leisure management contract, and also following the repair of the Thames towpath between Kew and Richmond Lock, there's further investment in towpath improvements. Again, we're continuing our investment in climate emergency strategy on the council's estate. This will generate a carbon saving and also generate an efficiency benefit, ensuring the best use of our asset space and reducing running costs where we can. Also continuing to invest in the number of trees in the borough. This slide outlines how we finance those investments. The overall capital investment has been prioritised to deliver the best value for our residents. And whilst the council, whilst ensuring that the financing of the programme is affordable for this council in the future. Where possible, we maximise external funding. We have developer contributions and external grant and capital receipts funding our overall programme. Borrowing is our last resort, but where we have to borrow to fund capital projects, we incur costs in revenue and our day-to-day spend. And that is financing that debt in terms of interest payments and repayment costs. For every £1 million we borrow, it adds over £70,000 per year in revenue costs. That has to be covered by council tax. This year, it's been very carefully considered what we can afford and what we are prioritising to continue to invest in. So the key area for the new financial year for all councils, as I outlined earlier, Richmond already receives very little general government funding, but the government's fair funding review, the long-awaited once in a generation reset of local government finance, takes even more away from this borough. The aim of the reset is to redistribute resources towards areas of the country with higher deprivation and weaker tax bases. The administration supports the stated aim of addressing historic underfunding in poor regions, But the way the funding has been calculated and the way the transitional protections have been designed result in a rapid, severe and disproportionate reduction in funding for Richmond. We've received a 3-year settlement of funding, which is welcome because that provides some certainty when we have in the past only seen 1 year at a time. But by the end of year 3, so that's 2028-29, the borough faces a reduction in funding of around £29 million. That's equivalent to 58% of its core funding. Now, this is an improvement to the original figures on which there was a consultation in the summer. So we have been successful in strong lobbying to the government. So that £29 million is a year-on-year cash flat reduction. So the government assumes that the full council tax increase is taken by the council each year, and then there is no government funding for inflationary pressures or additional funding for demand pressures. Alongside these funding cuts, all councils continue to face pressures in key statutory services, and there was already a funding pressure as a result of these demand pressures and recent high inflation. Pressures for Richmond continue, in particular in adults and children's social care and homelessness. This is in line with councils across the country, and our pressures are certainly not the most severe. We've incorporated a further budget of over £2.6 million for adults and children's social care, which is on top of actually 27 million across the previous 3 years. This is certainly the most important area driving up our costs. As well as the additional volume of social care users, we're seeing the complexity of needs increasing. And this might include multiple visits required from 2 or more care workers. Increased demand to house those presenting as homeless has required an extra £1.2 million of funding, and on top of significant inflationary pressures that have already crept through the cost of providing the accommodation. Whilst inflation is lower than it has been and has come down again this week with the announcement, the council will see the impact of the increase in the London living wage feeding through in future for costs where services are purchased on an ad hoc basis, known as spot purchase, particularly in adult social care, and also through contracts that are linked to London living wage increases. A provision has been set aside for these costs. The financial provision for demand growth that I've already outlined on the slide already actually assumes mitigating actions are taken to stem further increases, and this is likely to be very difficult for us to maintain, but we have a key area within our transformation programme looking forward to not only generate efficiencies for the council, but also improve service delivery. As part of this budget, we will be continuing the affordable housing programme and increasing temporary accommodation within the borough. That's looking to use external grant wherever we can, and will mean that our homelessness costs hopefully reduce when we can use our own stock or housing accommodation in the borough. And of course, it also provides an asset for the council. We've also added investment in the council's growth and place ambitions, which aims to accelerate inclusive economic development, attract inward investment and jobs, and enhance local infrastructure and town centres. We're also continuing to support our cultural events across the borough, including Centre Stage and High Tide festivals. And another area to highlight on the slide is the food waste collection service, which is being expanded to all properties across the borough, alongside many more investment areas that I've already touched on. To fund some of these pressures, we're continually looking for efficiencies. And a year ago, I spoke about the removal of £7 million from our budgets. And on top of that, we've taken another 11 million from April. So this brings savings to almost 60 million since 2018 per year. Some of these new savings reflect the launch of our ambitious transformation programme work that I've just touched on. So this covers the whole of the council's business to protect our services, improve our outcomes, and secure long-term financial resilience. The programme focuses on reshaping how the council works, so redesigning services around our residents' needs, embracing new technologies, streamlining processes and fostering innovation, using better data and analytics for decision-making, and stronger partnerships. It will focus on strengthening early help and prevention to improve outcomes and reduce demand for more costly interventions later, and making even better use of our council's assets, buildings and technology to provide services more efficiently and closer to where residents need them, and releasing value wherever we can. This will be our focus to manage our existing pressures and the funding drop that we've seen from government over the next 3 years. And we're investing in that transformation programme to make sure that's successful. So what does all this lead to? The maximum we're allowed to increase our council tax, as directed by government, is 4.99%, which would be made up of 2% for adult social care, plus 2.99% for the main element. As I've already said, we're continuing to face pressures in adult social care, so the proposal is to request that maximum increase in council tax across the borough. And those proposals will be considered at full council next week to increase by that maximum. But however, even though we do this, we will still need to draw from our reserves to balance the budget, and that will need £15 million in the year. The Mayor of London has also increased his share of the charge by just over 4% to fund police and the fire brigade. So that's the specific information about the council's budget and the position, and I'll hand over to Alex to discuss the wider economic outlook and business rates.
Thank you, Catherine. Morning, everyone. As Catherine said, I'm Alex Wilson and I'm Director of Revenue Services. Thank you very much for inviting us both to present today. I wanted to talk firstly about the significant overhaul in business rates in England from April this year, featuring a new revaluation of properties as well as a 5 new multiplier structure for different property types. I'll try to help to explain it, albeit briefly, what these changes will mean for businesses in Richmond. And then I'll share with you some of the work that the council's doing more generally in working with businesses in the borough. So firstly, to business rate changes. From April this year, the government is introducing a completely redesigned multiplier system, moving away from the current 2 multiplier system to a 5 multiplier structure. Now, these multipliers will depend on the rateable value of the property and its use. So the new multipliers for England for 26-27 include a small property multiplier, a standard multiplier, both a small and standard multiplier for retail, hospitality and leisure properties, and a high value multiplier for properties with a rateable value over £500,000. So clear as mud. It is complicated and not something I can explain in great detail in this session, but what I will try to do is to pull out some key points which hopefully might help with understanding. So one of the big changes is that the temporary 40% relief for retail, hospitality and leisure properties will end on the 31st of March. However, one of the purposes of the new business rate structure is to permanently create lower charges for RHL properties. Unfortunately, this is likely to result in higher bills for many retail, hospitality and leisure type properties. And that's because the starting baseline in 2025-26 has been artificially reduced by that 40% relief. Now there's been a revaluation also thrown into the mix, and the 2026 rating list is based on market rents as at April 2024, so that will have an impact as well. Richmond expects 79% of its business properties to see an increase in rateable value and a 14% overall growth in rateable value. That said, it is below the London and national averages. Transitional relief and supporting small business schemes will be in place to help moderate any steep increases. These schemes will basically cap the charge on significant increases, and that will be automatically applied to your bills. Next slide, please, Catherine. So what will the effect be on bills in Richmond? So for RHL properties, as I said, the temporary 40% RHL relief will end on the 31st of March, and instead it will be essentially baked into the new lower RHL multipliers. As I mentioned, these properties are likely to see increased annual liability. This is both due to the loss of the 40% relief, but also because reevaluation has resulted in an increase in rateable value for most retail and hospitality premises. Then for non-RHL properties, these may see lower or moderate increases, and that's because the 2026-27 multipliers are at their lowest level since 2010, and there'll also be transitional relief in place which will help phase some of those rises in. And then you have the large RV properties, so that's the properties valued at over £500,000, where there's a new high rate multiplier that comes into effect, and many of these are likely to see some sizable increases in their rateable value, unfortunately, and that will obviously impact on their business rate charge. So the council's got the supporting small businesses scheme. This continues to protect small businesses losing RHL relief or where they've got increases in their rateable value, and that scheme will help to cap annual increases in charges. The transitional relief scheme will also cap annual increases in liability to 5% for small businesses, 10% for medium properties, and 15% for the largest business properties in the borough. So what is it that businesses should expect to see on their 2026-27 bills? Well, you will receive a leaflet with your annual bill this year, which will help to explain how the new multipliers work. Your bill will display the specific multiplier that's been applied in calculating the charge, and there will be an automatic application of the new RHL multipliers where qualifying criteria continues to be met. So the council absolutely recognises how confusing this all is, and there will be clear links to council web pages for more detail. I just want to raise a couple of points for you to remember. The first is, if you disagree with your rateable value, you can challenge it via the Valuation Office agency, but this is not in the jurisdiction of the council. So if you do want to challenge it, then you have to go to the VOA. You can obviously do this by Googling the VOA business rates and following links to their website. But as a reminder, if you do appeal, you will still have to pay your bill until the appeal is heard. The other thing I wanted to just add is that if at any point you are struggling to pay your business rates bill, I implore you to contact us. We are there to support you. That might mean helping you to apply for discounts. Where you engage with us, we can suspend recovery action, and we can also set up alternative payment arrangements based on affordability. So please engage with us if you are struggling. Next slide, please. So finally, and hopefully on a more positive note, I wanted to cover some of the wider work that the council is doing to support businesses. The council's approved a new 10-year growth plan for the borough, which has been informed by engagement with businesses and key local employers, and we're looking to launch this next month. We're working closely with the BIDS and local business associations to promote local centres and independent businesses. Despite challenging trading conditions, we've actually seen increased footfall and decreasing vacancy across the borough, which is really positive. Now, we're particularly focusing on Richmond Town Centre, and last summer's centre stage event, which increased trading by over a third, will be repeated again this July. Our Public Realm Improvement Fund has funded improvements to high streets and town centres that are important to encourage local visitors. The council has increased its investment in public realm and highways by a third, and is one of the most extensive programmes of renewal and repair of any London council. The Zenith Enterprise Programme is nearing its end, but has supported more than 250 businesses and 60 startups. Sadly, however, this government funding ends in March this year, but the Richmond Business Hub provides information on other sources, so please do have a look at that. And finally, I wanted to mention the Richmond Work Match, which is the council's job brokerage service helping local people into work and local employers to find staff. It is free to local employers, and staff will work closely with employers to match their requirements to local job seekers. From last year, WorkMatch has been delivering a new programme, Connect to Work, which provides enhanced support to people with health conditions and disabilities looking to return to the job market. Support will also be available to employers to ensure their successful contribution to the workplace. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for inviting us to share this information with you today. We hope you found it useful, and I'll hand back to you, Anne.
Thank you very much indeed. That's very, very interesting. We'll be sure to relay your key messages here, particularly for businesses, in regard to business rate changes. Yeah, we'll make sure that there's a clear message to come to you, all the VLA, depending on exactly what their circumstances are. So thank you for that. And yeah, you continue to run the finances incredibly well, very competently and professionally, and that gives us all reassurance. So thank you again for that. And yeah, I mean, we'll be sure to be in touch, as I'm sure you will be, if there's anything that we should be engaging with you on. And obviously the growth plan, we've been in touch with your chief executive and Steve Diamond. And yeah, we're very excited about that. Sorry that the Zenith programme is coming to an end, but fantastic work there. And yeah, so thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Catherine, as well, for that in-depth view of performance last year and kind of the direction this coming year. It enables us to understand precisely what's happening and how to engage with you. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.